What's happening, everybody? This is Blair Johnson with the Badass Records podcast, welcoming you in for an episode. I am thrilled to share with you that this week's guest is none other than Dylan Johnson. You can find his stuff at dylanjohnsonlive.com or at humbledpride.com. He is Dylan, and so on the gram, Dylan_Johnson_music is where the best place to keep tabs on his stuff is. This thing is one-on-one conversations in the quasi-long form variety with folks about who they are, what they're into, and what some of their favorite music has been along the way. Episodes air Thursdays. You can stream/download, subscribe wherever it is that you get your audio content, or if you feel like viewing, it's on YouTube. Everything lives on the site, badassrecordspodcast.com, and the way to holler at me is badassrecordspodcast@gmail.com. Socials are Twitter and Instagram. That is it, I promise. Appreciate you stopping by. Hope you enjoy it. So I think will it be 149. I think this is 149, episode 149 of Badass Records Podcast, hanging with Dylan Johnson. Thanks for being here, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So let's see here. dylanjohnsonlive.com and then humbledpride.com.
That's correct. Yeah, most people say humble pride, so
No.
you got it right.
No.
You actually read it.
I don't have a lot of smarts or skill sets in the world of math and science and finance. The huge list, but I like clean copy.
Get words right.
Words. And I have a funny forever, like my whole life, this mix of emotions whenever somebody uses a word that I don't know, or I see a word that I don't know, and I'm like equal parts ashamed and excited to learn it, so that.
There you go.
Anyway,
Pays off.
So let's see, humbledpride.com. You on keys, guitar, and vocals, Matt Treadway on bass, and Chris Day on drums. Middle school friends through high school and college, and now in your 30s, and you're still buddies and gigging.
Almost 20 years of playing
nuts.
together. It is crazy.
No lineup changes.
Nope. No. Well, Matt quit the band at one point, but that lasted maybe 6 months.
Okay.
So,
hey,
yeah.
I got to take care of some shit. I'll be back.
And now he's the one that's in Houston, so we're trying to get him to like move back. So it hasn't been steady gigging for that whole time by any means, but
okay.
They were back in town 2 weeks ago, and we played a gig at the Poorhouse. That was
nice.
Of fun. So
okay.
We try to do at least like one or two a year right now.
Okay.
And if we ever get them both back in Kansas City, hopefully that'll ramp up.
You're the only one here.
Chris is in like Tonganoxie,
okay.
So he's pretty much here.
Right by the venue you'll be at tonight.
Yeah.
Suburbs in 2022, 10 tracks, 48 minutes, full-length release for Humbled Pride.
Yep.
Right? And which, by the way, Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, Amazon, Pandora, and Deezer. Walk me through the process, if you will, of getting Suburbs out there. The bone, like, is it a collaborative effort of writing, or does one person sort of bring, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Great question. I'm typically writing the lyrics, and I kind of like stockpile lyrics, I guess you could say. I go to a park or something, or go to a bar by myself, or anywhere where I can like eavesdrop on people is
I like that.
a great spot to generate lyrics. And so I kind of do that part first, or it's like on the side throughout the whole process of writing. And then I sit down on piano or guitar and just kind of hack up something and mess around. If something sticks, then I try to like mesh the lyrics in with that. And in my head, I'm always writing for the band. I don't. That's one thing that makes it difficult with all the solo gigging I've been doing, because I find it hard to play any original songs because I write these songs for the band. So like it's always with that
Interesting.
in mind during
Yeah.
the composition. So, a big moment in a song or something, I'm expecting a big cymbal clash or something, whatever. So,
Oh, yeah.
and it just feels kind of empty without that. So, pretty much though, once I have like lyrics meshed into a guitar or piano part, I bring that to the band, and those guys are amazing how fast they just like it works. They just they mess around with something. We'll change, our songs evolve over time, but usually within like a couple times of playing it, they have something that kind of works for a bass, and we just build from there and keep practicing it.
Cool. So you bring lyrics, sometimes keys, sometimes guitar as the foundation.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
collectively you guys flesh it out. fill in.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So what about choosing the tracks that made? Was that a demo? Did you guys bicker? Was it just smooth sailing?
It was pretty smooth sailing, because I think what happens with us when we give up on songs, we just give up on the song, and I think we all know, and we just stop practicing songs, and then we'll remember, we're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that song. We wrote that like a long time ago, but it just never stuck. So I think we had played those songs that made the album enough times to know they were the ones.
Sure.
And they were the ones that stuck around. So there's actually one that we didn't get around to recording that is about the same age, or it was written around the same time as most of those that we're going to put on the next album. But I would say
already plans for one in the works. Cool.
Yeah, and I would say the 10 that made it were all definite ones to make it.
So recording looked like what?
So yeah, we recorded when Matt had already moved to Houston.
Okay.
So it was really fun, actually. In 2021, I think it was October 2021, maybe. It might have been 2020 even. He visited for 2 weeks. And every day we had just like the same routine. If we worked in the morning. I took some time off work, and he took some time off work, obviously, and we would record in the morning. We would go out for like a happy hour in the afternoon to just kind of take a break, and then we would go back, listen to some of the stuff we recorded, and then put down some more stuff and correct some things. And
you got to step away for a minute, otherwise you don't have a fresh mind, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Think. Yeah, that's how recording is. Mixing is even more that way. Like the production part of it, I'm sure you know that from working with
so I'm 13-year-old and 10-year-old kiddos, and so obviously summer's different, but during school our alarms are 6 or 5:30, which means like I really need to shoot for 11:15. I'd love to be in bed earlier than that and up earlier, but anyway, so if I've gotten everybody to bed and I'm making smoothies or prepping coffee or whatever, and I get down here and I only have 15 minutes or 20 minutes, just move the needle a little bit. Just move the needle. Yeah. That's what I say coming down those stairs. It's going to move the needle a little bit.
Makes a big difference. Just even if you take the smallest little task just to keep the momentum going is huge.
Yep. Like I'll be in the middle of somebody's episode, and it's like maybe we've gotten to their albums. It's like I'm just going to get through one.
Yeah.
The part where we're talking about the next album.
Find a stopping point.
Yeah. So mixing is even bigger than recording in that department.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Because you got to have fresh ears for it. I mean, you get so stuck in your own mixes that
I bet
if you're tweaking things for like an hour, and then you're in a zone that you don't want to be in, really, because you're so enmeshed in what you're mixing that
Yeah.
you're not
Are
hearing
you
things
like,
properly.
okay, if in this 15 seconds the bass is not loud enough, or these kinds of
Yeah, that's what
tweaks?
in mixing they kind of call that automation, like volume
Oh,
automation.
okay.
So it's kind of a weird name for it because there's nothing automatic about it. It's very manual, in fact. But yeah, that's like basically manually adjusting volume at certain stages of the track is what's called volume automation.
Okay.
So there's some of that. That's kind of the hope is that you don't have to do much of that.
I would
If you
think
have
you've
if you have
said
good
it.
mics, if you have good vocal control, like can use a mic properly, that helps. That goes a long way. And then it all depends on how you play. Like if your bass player plays the chorus way louder than the verse, you're gonna have some issues. But my guys they do a pretty good job with that. I don't have to do a ton of that automation with them. Mostly the volume automation was with vocals and yeah, really that's most of it. Vocals.
So
That's
what
usually
other
on me.
tasks are under the mixing umbrella then? If
Yeah, so pretty much you start out with well, this is my process. So I'll start out mixing the drums, and we basically had 4 mics on the drums. So we had
and
or maybe 5.
you're recording live when you for suburbs, right? The three like one.
No,
Oh,
no. So
oh,
we tracked drums first.
gotcha.
So Chris, my drummer, had already actually finished all of his parts before Matt came to record.
Okay,
So basically, I'll start from the beginning, but basically I do what's called a garbage track. So I'll record to a click track like vocals and either guitar or keys at the same time, just as like a guide track. You need to call it a guide track or a garbage track. That's just so Chris has something to follow, and then we lay down drums. He listens to the guide track while he plays his drum part, so he has something to follow.
gotcha.
And then his part's official. We did like 3 takes, so that leads me to the other big part of mixing that's really time consuming and
Choosing
really
the
and
chunks from takes.
exactly. And that's really I don't want to say, yeah, I guess it is like tedious. It's tedious and it's a little bit mind numbing almost, because with drums especially, because you're just like, I just want it to be tight, like, and you can pick parts and copy paste, but that's really difficult with drums because there's
Gotta
like 5 mics and you really have to hold alt button, and like I'm sure with your DaVinci video editing of just really getting
gotta
it
be
fine. Yeah. So you can, within the context of the whole track, you can use certain time frames where something else is really loud and it will cover a transition. So that's kind of like a trick that I learned throughout producing this first album. But so yeah, anyway, the drums go after the garbage track. Then we did the bass after the drum tracks. Don't have the drum tracks fully mixed at that point, but you have them just leveled to something reasonable for the bass player to listen to. And then, of course, I went last because just like I'm obsessive about it and I'm going to take way longer than everyone else on it. So another reason why I wanted to produce the album myself rather than like going in and doing studio time, because it's just stressful, man. Like
Yeah.
being on the clock and knowing how much you're paying per hour.
Drummers,
So,
yeah, your drummer's been off the clock for
yeah,
3 weeks.
I personally, as a musician, can't work like that. At least within the budget that we have for our band. So,
Right.
which is like it's a sort of a hobby still at this point.
Okay.
So yeah,
So that's mixing. Producing is more, and I'm asking a wider lens like this. We're producing a final product
Yeah.
for folks
Yeah.
and for ourselves. Is that, does that lens leave out parts beyond mixing and the actual recording? Like what other pieces to
yeah.
produce?
That's a good question. So yeah, I would say, like, I'm not sure if this is the music industry definition, but I would say production of the album overall is more broad than mixing. Mixing, like you said, is just that one phase where you're trying to get the volume levels right of all the tracks, and then What's more in the production realm is what you do after, where you're adding effects to like reverb and delay effects to different parts of the track. You're doing kind of creative things like you're sometimes you do what's called like a double, where like say an acoustic guitar track, for example, like to the listener it sounds like it's one acoustic guitar playing, but a lot of times what it is three differently mic'd acoustic tracks of the acoustic guitar player playing the same guitar part. So it kind of like it thickens the sound a lot, and it
Yeah.
makes it a much richer sound.
Sure.
And panning, you can pan different instruments to different ways for a stereo setting. So that's huge within a mix. Like
Is that sending from one side to the other?
exactly.
Okay.
So
okay.
like, you know, the classic bands that like
Zeppelin.
really mess. I was just gonna say Zeppelin. Yeah.
Kings.
So like Queen did huge panning stuff. So I mean, yeah. So
all of which, you know, it took me a while to get there as a young person, building my cassette collection, to realize, I mean, years of listening and acquiring and eventually being like, oh, so really the way that this record is not replicable on stage,
Right.
because you've taken three different, there's just one guitar player.
yeah, it's a totally different animal. Like just playing a song live together and translating that to the studio is so weird.
Okay, so you take on, so you brought ideas, and together you guys make your list of songs, you record, and you go in and do all the mixing, you do all the producing, and then is the next step just getting it out? I mean, what?
So there's like a mastering step, which is basically mastering. Like, let's just say I'm not a master at mastering.
But you've done it.
It's a very vague term. It's basically getting things to the highest volume level that you possibly can without making anything clip. Is I guess how I would describe it. And I don't want to get too deep into it, but there's like, do you remember the loudness wars? Like, you know what that is? Like
a Chili Peppers record made somebody's list, and maybe Californication, and that was one where they're like, fuck, we need to go back and redo this because it's just,
they remastered it at like to be louder or something like that.
No, I think they had to go back in and dial it back because it was in the middle of that, and everything, you know, or however that looks knob wise, and then it was like, it kind of sounds shitty.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's exactly what happens if in the old days during loudness wars and stuff. You're trying to push those levels as much as you can without clipping, but sometimes you're obviously going to go, or it's not necessarily just without clipping, but it gets really complicated of like your sound can get muddy when you get up towards the higher end of like close to clipping. And there's a lot of things that can make your record sound worse, but everyone also wants their record to be the loudest.
Of course.
So it used to be a huge thing to use all the tools you possibly can, which, you know, compressors, limiters, which is basically just a form of a compressor to basically just dial up those volume levels as much as you can without sacrificing the sound integrity. But now what's happened, which is a good thing for the industry, is that like platforms like Spotify and the like, they basically have what I think it's called LUFS. It's like the volume level, but they basically have a way to regulate it so that everyone's music comes out at the same volume now. So
it's gotta, if you don't want, you know, your platform just in the department of playlists, in and out of different artists every track.
Yeah.
You don't want it to be this and then that and then this.
Right.
And that,
Yeah. When you're playing like I just remember playing like old shuffled music that, you know, I downloaded from LimeWire or whatever. Or wait, no, I didn't do that.
Yeah.
But like, and it was just like, whoa, I got to turn that down. And like, wait, did I stop playing my music? So but luckily those volume wars are kind of over. So all that to say, mastering is not what it used to be, but it's still a super important step.
Sure.
And it's not one that I understand well. So I used a few tools and like a few recommendations from a couple YouTube like channels that I trusted on the recording stuff, and I just called it good with the mastering steps. And so a
previous guest said perfect is almost never as good as done.
Right.
Right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you just gotta be. You know
That's
what?
a battle. Yeah.
Hey, I'm good with it. So okay,
You have to walk away from the mix at some point. You have to walk away
yeah.
from the adding effects at some point, and you just have to call it done.
So I can't get away from this idea of just, for example's sake, that you're working on the drums, and it's track 3, and the run is a minute 19 to a minute 34. So this is the section, but you've got 3 different
To
takes,
choose from,
and
right?
so like,
And 5 different mics within each of those 3 different takes.
oh my
But actually,
god,
I shouldn't say that. That's unfair to say because you're not normally choosing like a mic from you're not doing weird
okay,
combinations. So
okay.
it's been so long since I was doing
But
it. But yeah, you
point
don't really do
being,
that.
if you look at whatever that 14 seconds of track, and I, if you don't step away and take a break and come back fresh,
Right.
how do you even hear the differences
Right.
in that little
Yeah.
piece?
And yeah, during that monotonous part of like track selection, that's almost the part where like you can keep going longer than other times. And I don't want to say you should, but like it's the mixing part where you're trying to get the volumes right and trying to dial in like how much reverb do I want on this guitar, what amp like which amp simulator should I choose for this guitar, all those questions, like those are the ones where you really need to step back like after like not even looking at it for very long and you need fresh ears on it, like regularly take breaks to come back. The monotonous part, like just get that part done,
Okay.
like just hammer that part
Yeah.
out because and obviously when you go back and listen something might jump out at you like whoa that like I didn't clip that part correctly, like there's like a click in there, a weird click where I went from track 1 to track 2 at X seconds or whatever. So
God, how many full listens to where you feel like I know that there's none of that in there? It's all right. It's the way that I want it to be.
yeah,
3?
probably more because probably more like 10 because you're the other thing is you want to listen to it on like different
Oh yeah.
speakers. So
Yeah.
you definitely like you want to trust one as being frequency like flat frequencies, but like meaning like these headphones probably are like studio headphones. So that's what you want to trust as your like basis, as your baseline, because you don't want to take any like Dre Beats bass booster headphones and then call that your actual mix.
Yeah, yeah.
But the reality is that most people are listening to music on their like
Phone.
from their phone speakers
Yeah.
or whatever. And it's like
Garbage.
that's cringy when you're putting in all that work. But so I always appreciate when people have an appreciation for the speakers they're
Yeah.
listening to music
Yeah.
on. Obviously, as an artist, I think every musical artist does. But yeah, so I would try to listen to it on 5 different mediums before really saying like, okay, there's none of that nonsense
Sure.
in there that I need to clip out.
Man.
So.
And I'm a little embarrassed to admit that the one place that I didn't peek was Bandcamp. Do you have a Bandcamp?
I think our distribution went out to that.
Okay.
I'm not sure. We
Okay.
use it's not DistroKid, but it's the other one that's
Sure.
I can't even think of what they were called. But anyway,
It puts it all the places. But I mean, the reason I was curious was because Suburbs does have some album cover artwork.
yeah,
Right? Is it a photo?
yeah,
of you guys?
I think my bass player's no, my drummer's wife took that picture
Okay.
of us, and that's just in my house.
Easy
So.
decision for you guys to be like, this is what we're gonna use for the.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think we kind of just we threw around a few ideas, and we just decided like for our first album, like let's have our faces on it.
Yeah,
Like,
of course.
and I don't know, I don't think it mattered to any of us that much.
Okay. Now, you didn't do physical copies of any medium?
We didn't. No.
Okay, so did you-
No, not at this point. We considered that, but man, no one listens to CDs. We thought about doing vinyl, but it's really expensive to press vinyl. So
What
we
about-
were
so
like,
did
we're not
that-
expecting.
Did that mean that there was not a need to have liner notes and credits, or Do those exist?
Correct. Yeah, I don't
Okay.
think there was anything there. There's obviously like there's the information you fill out. Like I think it's like the writing credits and the
In your distribution platform.
right,
Yeah.
and then it fills the appropriate fields and all of the ends. So
Cool.
yeah.
So,
Can you tell me what that is? I'm sorry. I have a lot of like liner notes, or I'm not even
oh,
familiar with
yeah,
that. I don't think.
absolutely.
I
That's a great
actually I'm
question.
embarrassed to say because I have a lot of records that I've inherited from my dad and my uncle. So
All of that.
okay, very cool. So
So a lot of
lyrics, sometimes
lyrics,
lyrics,
band
yeah.
members, what they play, track listing, track run times, what year it was recorded,
I
who
gotcha.
produced it,
Okay, I just never knew the term liner notes, but that makes sense. Cool.
and where it was recorded, who mixed and mastered. A lot of times, some artwork, and if my wheelhouse is if there's like bonus stuff to read, like a story,
Oh yeah,
or the
yeah,
tale of how this record was made, or if it's your first record, how you guys met, whatever.
that's cool. Yeah,
Just geek out,
yeah, yeah.
just sucking up knowledge about whatever.
Yeah, and it's like actually from the band, like they wanted you to know this.
Yes,
It's not just
yes.
someone writing about them. It's cool.
There's a really cool example of that, actually. I don't have too many records, and really, I mean, I have some from random ones from childhood, and gathered a few along the way, and then started buying them of late. And I think I hate to if I get this wrong, but I think it's Benevento Russo Duo's Play Pause Stop record. Are you familiar with these guys?
No.
Joe Russo, who is I think probably better known for Joe Russo's Almost Dead, J-Rad.
Okay.
It's a Grateful Dead like
Okay.
current, and they do there no Dead members in it. They
Okay.
just
But they cover
Yeah.
their songs. Okay.
they tour. I mean, they're touring right now. They're Red Rocks maybe right now. Anyway,
Oh, cool. Okay.
so Joe Russo and Marco Benevento, and it's just keys and drums,
Okay.
all instrumental. They put out a few
That's
things
cool.
as a duo, but Play Pause Stop. I mean, I had goosebumps. I like feel tears. I mean, it's
Nice.
just. I mean, it's so rad. And I think when I
Check
got
that out.
actually, I have it right here. But I'm thinking of the vinyl version. Anyway, there's a dude named, his Instagram handle is Currency with an I, Currincy. And he writes. Right now he's like absolutely killing life in that he's found like the real quantifiable love in a soulmate or a life partner.
Uh-huh.
Like, and I'm about to be 50. He might be a couple years older than me, and he has found that person. And they were in Virginia and moved to Colorado. They climb mountains and like kind of do a van life. And he goes and interviews folks and writes piece. I mean, and
Oh, that's cool.
yeah. But I think that he wrote the liner notes for the vinyl version of that record, which I've had that for years.
Yeah.
And then I got it because I want to put it in the rotation over there. And just columns and his copy is miraculously clean. Every Instagram post is like super long, and then 5 continuations in the comments, never an error, real clean copy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
Admirable stuff.
Yeah. So, but the gigging that you're doing is right now is almost exclusively solo and acoustic.
Correct,
Because they're not here, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, my drummer just had his second child, so he's been obviously busy with that, and we've played a few gigs, just us two, but
Okay.
we're always just like, oh, we can't play this one without Matt. We can't play this one without Matt. Like, you just miss the bass so much, and like it's really tough just playing.
So when you're when it's time for you to put on your songwriter hat, you're you have several to choose from, because there's stuff that you're writing for solo gigs, stuff you write for the band, and then maybe other stuff that you write for the two of you, or
Right. So I really just write for the band.
okay.
I think that's just the natural mode I write in. So I really don't try. Like, it's difficult. I think I was saying earlier, it's difficult for me to play original music in my solo gigs. One, because it's hard. It's hard to like the crowds at most of the places I play, bars and restaurants, like, they want to hear songs they know. That's
So
the
solo
reality
shit is
of it.
mostly
So
covers.
solo shows are almost exclusively covers. Yeah, I'll sprinkle
Really?
in a few original songs here or there,
Okay.
but it depends on the place. More places, or some places, are much more receptive to wanting to hear original music.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It just depends on the venue. So, but for the most part, not all the songs I write, like, I write for the band, and the songs that I write don't always translate to being able to play them solo
Fair.
and have them
Yeah.
function as a song.
Yeah.
It's too empty. Sometimes the guitar or keys part that I'm playing is actually, like, not the main melody. It's like a harmony of, like, the bass line is keeping, like, the main.
Okay.
So I go into much more of, like, a composition mindset when I'm songwriting. At least when I'm in that phase of taking from my stockpile of lyrics and marrying those up to guitar or keys parts that I've written. That's when I'm always keeping in the back of my mind the, like, what could Chris possibly do here? What could Matt possibly? And I don't dictate that with them
No.
when we get in a room and play, but it's just, that's all part of, like, my vision for a song.
Okay.
Is kind of like that, and then it usually turns into something different than that. But
I guess then the analogy isn't reaching for a songwriting hat; it's reaching for a practice / rehearsal hat. Because
yeah.
I would guess that you have to, on some level.
Oh yeah, you have to workshop them all. Yeah, is that
your solo acoustic cover? Like, you need to learn them first.
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
occasionally practice them or tweak them.
It's amazing how hard it is to memorize your own lyrics. I feel like I remember the lyrics of cover songs easier because it's like I've heard it before. I've heard it many times before.
Okay, interesting.
And the originals, I'm like, I've only played this for myself 3 times or something. So it's incredibly hard to remember the lyrics. And if you change lyrics like I do, like, that gets even harder because you're like, you decide you don't like a line and you
of somebody else's song.
No, like of your
own
song.
Oh,
so like
then you got to relearn it.
Yeah, and then you'll sing it the old way, and you're like, no, that's the one I hated. That's why I changed that line. So, yeah, there's a lot of that.
So in the, I forget her name, Spark Joy, this concept of the things that are in your home and in your life. And if you're going to purge, like, the test is, when you hold it in your hand, does it give you joy? And if it doesn't, get rid of it, right?
Yeah.
So in the traditional, if you will, sense of garage band, all the way to record deal or gigs or whatever, like, there's oftentimes a spot where it's like, looking back, that was back when we were still doing covers, right? Which is, I've never been in a band, but I mean, I've dabbled with instruments and, obviously sing when I listen to music sometimes. And it has always seemed to me that doing covers would be fun. I would enjoy it. So if your solo acoustic gigs are almost exclusively that, I mean, is it joyful for you? Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Oh, it's
cool.
so much fun.
Awesome. Because I feel, there is in the music loving world, there's a look down at your nose segment, a small segment. Is that okay?
Oh yeah. and I think that same segment wouldn't feel that way. Like I think that it's more looking down when someone doesn't write any of their original music.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And I think like there's I like to think and hope that there'd be some understanding of like these are gigs. Like he's playing gigs and he's playing cover gigs, and that's just
do you
the
bring
way it is.
something humbled pride related to gigs, like stickers or anything that
Yeah, I usually
QR code or
QR code.
okay.
I have like it's a terrible sign, but it's a sign with a QR code for my website, like which is basically my solo music gig website, and then also with my band's website on it.
Okay.
And I on my website, which like when I hand out business cards, there's a QR code and like says my website, and then on my website I have like suburbs and my band promoted and links over to that page too. So that's kind of how I'm managing that now. But
take when you're in between songs, don't forget to take a picture of the that kind of thing.
Exactly. And then I usually try to play one or two originals, and I'll say, this one's off of my band's last album, and sometimes that piques some interest, and people ask me after, so you're in a band, and then it's a thing of like, oh, you write original music, so.
When people ask you after, or if you do a set break or anything like, or when you're setting up, is there ever the feeling of I kind of wish I could be left alone and not approached, and I want to set up and do my gig and break down and go home, or is that also a joyful portion of the?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think musicians like to be left alone when they're like setting up and taking down, but like almost infallibly that doesn't happen because it's like, when else are you going to talk to them? Setting up's worse. I don't mind it at all when I'm taking down. When I'm setting up, it's really hard. I'm usually running like 5 to 10 minutes late. I'm like, I want to start on time because it kind of looks bad for the place when you don't start on time. And when it's after, you're kind of like, whatever, like I'll talk to whoever.
Sure.
But it's a little frustrating but then you're like, I don't want to be an asshole to this person when that's about to listen to me. So that's difficult to navigate, but it's like, I would say it's not welcome, but it's like, it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, what if I could envision myself if I sat through a set of yours being like, all right, I have 7 things that I want to ask him.
Yeah.
When the show's over, maybe I should narrow it down to 2 and leave him alone. What I mean?
Like I said, after is totally a different story. I think it's some people are short with you after too, but I'm not. It's the before, because it's like, okay, before you ask all these questions too, like maybe like let's hear a few songs. And then
So Dylan. With a Y _Johnson_music for the Instagram handle.
Yep.
Is that the best place for folks to keep tabs?
That's kind of the only social I have exclusively dedicated to music, like to my music. So that and my website is probably the best.
DylanJohnsonLive.com.
Yep. Okay. So I have a shows calendar on embedded Google Calendar on DylanJohnsonLive.com, which is I keep that updated with any local gigs I have.
Cool.
So
nice. Yep. So born and raised in Manhattan?
Yep.
Okay.
For the most part, or sorry, not born and raised, but I lived there since I was, I think, 5th grade or something, 4th grade.
Okay.
I think. So
interesting.
Before that, my dad was military.
Okay.
He's retired military now, so we traveled, or I lived all sorts of places when I was younger than that.
Okay. So. Now, but that's like home, right?
That's home.
Okay.
Yeah, Manhattan.
How long has this MHK thing been around?
Man, it feels like that sprung up
recently.
No, we called it that in high school.
Did you really?
Okay. But it was new then.
Okay.
I think it was like yeah, either late high school for me, which would have been like 2010 is when I graduated high school. So it was either, I feel like it was roughly around that
Okay.
time, like late high school, early college when I heard a lot of people saying MHK and it's like, yeah, I guess that's our airport code. I guess that's what we're
Oh,
calling
is it?
as. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So you didn't know that?
No.
Okay. So
No.
that's where it came
Okay.
up from is that's
I'm glad you said that because that reminds me that I wanted to ask origin story for the Humbled Pride name.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't think any of us like the name anymore, to be frank. But it's when you're together like 20 years, you're not going to change it at this point. So we've talked about it before, and we're like, we're not going to be one of those bands that change our name. So we came up with that in like 7th grade. I think we just had a list of all bad ideas and we chose that one. So we don't like it that much, but it is what it is. That's how band names are. So
Gotcha. Well,
yeah.
The MHK is very new to me, and I don't like it because it doesn't work. Like M and H are
It's,
part
like,
of this.
confusing.
That's
Yeah.
not how you make an acronym. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It does sound like a pretty handsome airport nickname. However,
Yeah.
but I've never even really.
I get it. You're like, why are they putting the H?
Well, it's like
within
when
the acronym when it
every year when football and basketball season starts for KU and people are hashtag RCJH.
Oh,
It's like
yeah.
Jayhawks one fucking word. What are you doing? It's RCJ,
Yeah,
you know. But nevertheless,
I can see that bothering you with what you
Yeah.
described about yourself
yeah,
earlier. So.
yeah. It's like
It's not how you do acronyms.
Yeah, yeah.
Reminds me of like a Tim Robinson skit or something like getting
exactly. So siblings.
2 sisters, one older, one younger,
Okay.
and then one brother that's like 10 years younger than me. So
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So you were the middle child
was
for a
middle
minute,
child,
and then
yeah.
you weren't.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So dad was
I
military.
guess I still was one of 2 middle after. So yeah,
There you go.
Yeah.
Dad was military. How did he and mom cross paths? Do you know?
So they met on an airplane.
No shit.
Yeah, I don't know where it was going to and from.
MHK.
Yeah, they're now divorced, but they've been
Okay.
divorced since I was late high school.
Okay.
So, but my dad lives in Montana now. My mom still lives in Manhattan. So,
Okay.
Yep, still get to see them both
Okay,
regularly.
cool.
So my dad comes back actually to Kansas City for a lot of my gigs. So I
Nice.
see him still quite a lot.
Right
So-
on.
And my mom comes up all the time too. They've been very supportive of the music stuff always. So
Cool.
That's been nice.
They occasionally at the same gig.
Yeah.
And they're
yep. Yeah. civil.
Cordial and
Yep.
cool. Nice.
Yeah, that's been a blessing too. With like, I couldn't ask for better with having divorced parents of
And-
like somewhat still getting along. And
Yeah.
everything, So.
When it went down, did they co-parent well? You were how old? 10?
No, I was in high school.
Oh, I'm
Or
sorry.
just
Okay.
out of high school.
Just
so
out.
I'm trying to remember. Yeah, something. It was around that time. So,
Okay. So you're one of 2 middle, and how old is the youngest?
He is 10 years younger than me, so
10.
he would be like he's like 21, I think.
So they would,
21,
if they were gonna do well or not in the co-parenting department, it would have been for his sake,
right.
right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So what is this?
Yeah,
24?
I was past the point of
Yeah. I'm
that
6
type of
years
growth or whatever.
divorced, separated, and she's at the end of the block, and school is 2 blocks away, and so
That's nice for the kids.
it is,
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't. The proximity doesn't necessarily matter, but the co-parenting energy, like,
Oh yeah.
all of it affects them, positive, negative,
Yep.
So I mean,
Yeah.
what? How are you gonna, what kind of person are you gonna be? What kind of parent are you gonna be? And just thankfully, we have so far navigated that well.
Great.
Yeah. So did they put on music in the home to listen to when you were young?
Yeah. Yeah, they both loved music. My mom loved Tracy Chapman.
Okay.
So that was a huge influence growing up. I still love Tracy Chapman. My dad loved Bob Dylan.
Okay.
Neil Young. He loved Neil Young. Actually, I'm like, I don't want to come out and say I'm named after Bob Dylan, but Dylan was sort of like, I think my mom kind of liked the name, and then my dad was like, definitely let's go with
whenever
name our
I
son after Bob Dylan. So
see a child or whatever, and it's Dillon, I'm like, your
it's
parents missed
cringy.
out. Yeah,
Like the grocery store.
yeah,
You
yeah.
chose the grocery
Yeah.
store instead of the musician.
Yeah. I mean, anyway.
Yeah.
So, what did they have? Did they have CDs? What did they have? Tapes?
You know, I think mostly CDs.
Okay.
It's hard to remember, honestly. I remember the receiver, like I remember the stereo receiver, but I don't remember records spinning. So
Okay.
I think it was mostly CDs. Yeah, yeah, they had some good CD collections.
Cool.
I remember my dad listening to a lot of Nancy Griffith. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's kind of folksy.
Sounds. It's exactly what I pictured.
Yeah, she's great. Trying to think of what else my mom liked. My mom likes all sorts of music, but yeah, they played good stuff around the house for the
Cool.
most part. Yeah, that
And
I
you
liked.
mentioned a little bit ago LimeWire. Did you ever at any point begin a physical collection?
Absolutely, yeah.
Was there a first album that was a love or a purchase or a borrow or?
Yeah, I think that Counting Crows album
Okay.
that we'll talk about later, August and Everything After, was maybe the first CD I bought. No, that's not true. Before that, I had an obsession with Green Day in like 7th grade, and I think I downloaded every single one of their songs. So I had like CDs, and I didn't, for whatever reason, I didn't even like download the albums, like all the tracks from this album, and then burn the CD and call it this album.
Oh,
I
okay.
downloaded just like all the songs, and I would do as many as would fit on a CD.
Yeah.
And then I just had all these CDs in my CD wallet. There was like Green Day 1, Green Day 13, Green Day 15.
Nice.
So
They're still, doing the thing, man. Like,
Yeah, it's crazy.
putting out
but-
records, touring. I mean,
Yeah.
Dooky's been on a few lists.
Oh, of past guests that
Yeah.
you had? Okay,
And
cool.
so, like, I have 3 younger sisters, and the next in line below me was 3-year difference. So she was like a freshman when I was a senior, and like
Listening to the cool music.
watching in live time as her tastes and her collection grew.
Yeah.
There were things that I was like,
Yeah,
Green Day.
yeah.
I was always like,
I remember that with my older sister too, just of taking some of it and some of it being like,
yeah.
no,
And
that
I
does
always
not.
was like, "It's fucking Green Day shit, man." But when I, so when it's made a couple of lists, I sit down and mindfully listen to it and read some shit, and it's like,
Yeah.
very fascinating to me that they really took, in my opinion, it felt like for years that punk was always just going to live here. Mm-hmm. And they, just really lofted it into the mainstream, which seemed impossible.
Yeah.
And then it's like,
For sure.
this rift in the punk rock musician world where it's like, fucking sell, that's not punk.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
other camp is like, but we've all wanted our records to do well.
Yeah.
All of us, every and so they did, and now you're like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
It's polarizing.
Yeah,
with
yeah.
it. Like anytime you have a genre that is like, that grows from a movement like that, I think, where you're kind of like, we're the rejects. Like we're not sellouts, like like in any aspect of life. Then when someone does get successful, it's like, yeah, it's easy.
What's
easy to be
crazy is
jealous.
that like they're for a time it felt like you could almost sort of see the end of the line for the genre.
Yeah.
And so many, hundreds and hundreds of outfits arrived because of that lift. Not necessarily that band, but the
yeah, that's a good point. It was probably sort of dying around that time, because I like, not that I was aware of that at the time by any means,
Right.
but I remember
Me
like
either.
looking back and seeing a lot of like auxiliary type that type of music, and just being like, yeah, they're all kind of running together. Like a lot of them started to sound the same, and yeah, I think it needed the punk rock scene probably needed Green Day to keep it
Yeah.
alive.
So you're seeing Glass Animal, or is it plural tonight?
Glass Animals plural.
Glass
Yeah.
Animals at
Yep.
Sandstone. Do you remember your first show?
My first show, yeah, Ben Folds, in Bramlage Coliseum in Manhattan,
Okay,
Kansas.
okay. That's
So the basketball,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
the university's basketball stadium. So yeah, that was fun. And then right around the same time, I saw a very old Bob Dylan. Um, he was like playing just keys, no guitar, with a band, Bob Dylan and his band, and that was at Bramlage too. And I don't remember which one of those was first, but I think the Ben Folds one was first.
That's so. Just because those two gigs were at Bramlage doesn't mean you were already in college. You were younger.
Right, I was
Okay.
younger. Yeah,
Okay.
I just was living in Manhattan, so
Nice. So you
I
still
think I was probably like late. I was probably middle school.
okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
So
that's about the time I think.
yeah.
So you bring keys, vocals, guitar to Humbled Pride. Where does your trajectory as a musician begin?
Yeah. So I took piano lessons early on, elementary school, and I think that would have been probably like third or fourth grade. I want to say I did that for a couple years. Then finally, it was just an every week thing, and I was not into it that much anymore. So I stopped, and then got an interest in guitar. I remember my dad had an old guitar, old like Sigma guitar or something. It was not a nice guitar, um, and I remember learning chords on that, and then I
Just
got
teaching yourself.
yeah teaching
Did some of
myself
that
just from
translate from piano?
absolutely yeah.
Okay.
That's what actually I know that a lot of people say that, and that's absolutely true. That like having the piano background helps a lot with learning. I think any other instrument. Because piano it's so visual, just the layout of all the notes, whereas on a guitar or any like stringed instrument it's not really visual at all because there's jumps in the notes. And piano it's like yeah, that's the next one, that's the order of all the notes, and there they are. So
Mine have been in lessons for 6 years.
piano,
Yeah,
cool.
and we've had a number of different teachers, but really making them, you have to practice.
Mm-hmm.
You also have to read every day, and then there's other stuff too. But if you want to hang, if you want screen time, like
Mm-hmm.
that
Do
happens
that
and
first,
the
yeah.
thing is that like it was fun for a little bit for them, and then but they get to a certain age and they're like gripey about it.
Yep.
And there's a moment where it's like the griping is almost overbearing, and then it
Yeah.
tampered down somewhere in that range. How long do I have to? I don't know, until you're done with eighth grade. And
Yeah.
that's where she is now. Like she just started eighth grade, and so I know that she's going to hold me to that, and it makes me so sad. That,
Yeah.
the hope is
But
that
maybe that's long enough. Maybe she went for long enough that she'll pick it back up out of her interest later, and she's done it long enough where she built a foundation, and so
I don't need for her or want her to keep piano in her life. I just wanted her to have that side of the brain,
yeah, yeah,
stimulated. Hopefully, it will have contributed something in the way of the music that she likes, music appreciation, and so it's
yeah,
not just all like, "Well, I know that from TikTok."
right,
It's
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
Anyway, and if I'm being honest, like just because he's not in eighth grade, he still started when she started, so he's logged all the same years.
yeah,
I don't know if he's made that discovery yet. He thinks he's got three, but anyway. So
right,
you take an interest in the guitar, it translates a little bit. You're kind of teaching yourself.
yep. And at that point, I wasn't taking any guitar lessons, but then I think it was my mom's mom, my grandma encouraged me to take some lessons, and she paid for the lessons for a while. So
Okay.
that was really nice. It was like a Christmas gift or something. So then I was taking guitar lessons for, I think, probably 2 years. then I think I stopped that. Well, things got kind of busy with high school too, so I think I just cut that out. And then I was playing well enough guitar where I could at least like further teach myself things and I knew the theory well enough where I could practice things I knew from the theory.
And the internet exists.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And so I was kind of still working a lot on guitar, and that's when we had a piano still because my sisters played a little bit. They took lessons around the same time I took lessons, and I started coming back to the piano, and I was enjoying that a lot too. And I started to enjoy both and switching back and forth. So yeah, and then I've just kept it up with those two, and I'm sure I always sang from like the time I started playing guitar or even piano. I think I would want to play songs that I could sing
At
to
the same time.
So,
You just had that.
I had the desire to do that, and
Well,
maybe it was
and
like being bored with like just playing like classical music that was piano at that age. That was like only piano.
There's folks that have it sort of out of the gate, the ability to sing and play an instrument. There's folks that need to master the instrument or the song,
right?
And then they can do. And then there's
it
folks
has to
that
be second nature on the instrument before they can sing
correct.
on top of it.
And then there's folks that just can't or have never pushed themselves, and so
Right.
they don't sing and play at the same time. So
Right.
it's fascinating.
Do
But
your kids sing?
yeah, I mean, not while they practice piano.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But okay. Yeah.
So I
Just
remember
curious.
last winter, I think, yeah, it was last winter, I printed out the lyrics to, and one of these stands over there was her. It was like a Christmas present, and then she was, using it to record videos and whatever. Not long after she got it, I was like, I need to get one for myself for down here. And then eventually she got one that she liked better. So now they're both mine, sort of.
Oh, yeah.
But point being, I was like, we should have you guys record, we'll make a video of you guys doing Good King Wenceslas. Are you familiar with this tune?
Yeah, the Christmas song.
And so he's.
I don't know if that's a Christmas.
Yeah,
Is it?
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, because it's.
I
the
know.
whole
I know it. Yeah.
The whole thing is the dude. They're out in the snow and the weather's shitty, and the assistant's like, we got to protect the king and get you. And he's like, no, there's a dude over there, and he like sacrifices his robe or something, and they bring this dude back and feed him and get him warm, and it's like the spirit of Christmas, if you will.
Oh, okay, yeah, cool. So definitely Christmas.
So anyway, yeah, I mean, we had to do a number of takes, and it was funny because there's each verse, the last little few notes of the vocal piece and the music, right?
Oh yeah, I know exactly what part you're talking about. Yeah,
and so like. I couldn't get her on the right key.
Yeah.
And then we'd get
It's
her
tough to
there,
sing that.
and he would be fumbling. And then,
Yeah.
So
for them to both perform it correctly at the same time.
Yeah. But they sing along. They're never just whatever. It doesn't matter.
Right.
So Humbled Pride is your only band.
Yep.
That's, by the time, what are you in your, you said you're in your 30s?
32.
32. Okay.
Yeah.
Oftentimes if somebody has had a similar trajectory of piano lessons, guitar, they're like, think about all the bands that I've been in. And they'll list 5, and then later they're like, oh, there was another one.
Yeah.
But
I know. It's crazy. Yeah.
Very cool. Very unique.
I think we were pretty regular with practicing too.
Nice.
Even throughout, and with gigging. Like when we've all been in the same town, we've always, like in middle school and stuff, we would practice regularly and then play gigs, and what middle school gigs are, like talent shows, and like for the school, for certain school events and stuff. And then once we got into high school, there was actually a really cool like live music bar in Manhattan that would let like underage bands play. So that was really cool. It was in Aggieville, and that was helpful to keep it going for us too. And then once we got to college, we played at Aggieville bars all the time, so
Nice.
we were regularly practicing.
Cool.
So I think that ability to keep having gigs, keep having something to practice for was
Sure.
Then it was just like, all right, why would I try any other bands? Like, I'm with these guys, we're writing new music.
So the fact that this longevity with you, the three of you, exists 7th grade through early 30s,
Yeah.
but your first full-length record is not even 2 years old. Is there rhyme or reason, or just coincidence that this isn't your 6th record or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, we all went to K-State, and we tried to record some things in college. Like, we tried to track some things. So I mean, it's probably not our first, like, I'm sure it's not our first album, what we thought at the time, but we never distributed anything before this one. I remember Matt was in a fraternity, and they had like a fraternity break, or it was over Christmas break or something, and he had the house to himself, and we set up all these mattresses in the basement of the fraternity and tried to record an album down there. So we've had attempts, but it's just never been professional quality. So,
yeah, sure. Yeah.
And there's some old ones that we've dug up, and I think I have them on like Google Drive, and pretty cringy for production level. And,
shit. I mean,
but the songs are cool. We're like
hey,
looking back on some of those songs, I'm like, man, that's actually like pretty impressive for what age we were that we were playing those songs.
Any where you're like, we should consider revitalizing?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes I get that itch, and we have a few really old ones that we just played at our last gig, and we were like, we should bring those back. And so one of the old ones that I already mentioned, that's gonna go on the new album, we just didn't like get around to recording it for this album. There's that one, and then there are like 2 others that we performed at our last gig, and we're like, maybe we should bring those back. So
nice.
Yeah, it's nice when the songs stick for that long. 'Cause like some of these I wrote in high school, and I'm playing them in my 30s, and it's weird, but it's like, it's cool too.
Yeah.
So
nice. Well, thanks again for being here and for sharing your list with me. I want to get into it, but I also want to use the restroom real quick.
Okay. Yeah.
So I just usually roll through these in release order, if that's cool.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So we'll start in 1968 with Van Morrison's Astral Weeks.
Yeah.
I, at some point, probably when I was in the 90s, getting hundreds, all of a sudden this new fascination cropped up for me in that I had no idea how long this would go, and somebody relatively early was like, you managed to record quite a few. Have you ever looked to see how long the average podcast exists? And I was like, no. He's like, well, if you think about everybody that actually starts one all the way up to like the OGs that have been at it for a decade plus,
right,
6 episodes. If you average the whole thing. So when I learned that in the 30s or 40s, I was like, I feel pretty good,
Yeah.
And then get to like the hundreds, and I'm just, all of a sudden I'm getting this influx of lists that have records or artists that have not been on any list. I'm like, wow, we can be this deep, and it's the fresh is still.
Yeah.
So I geek out about firsts, right?
That's cool. Yeah.
Or few mentions. This Van Morrison record is second of 47 for him. 8 tracks, 47 minutes, and only the second Van Morrison record to make a list in almost 150 episodes. The other was my Uncle Mike. Shouts out to Uncle Mike, who had Moondance.
Oh yeah,
on
that's
his
a great
list.
album too.
And I don't know how you leap into a conversation about a guy like Van Morrison, who for many years for me was a couple of FM radio hits, and then I get to college and I'm like, oh,
he
Holy
did all this other stuff.
Well, and he's hugely revered,
Yeah.
and a multi-instrumentalist, fantastic songwriter. I mean, he's so much more than I thought he was for the
He's
longest.
really involved in production too, from what
Okay.
I've read.
Okay.
Like where he's in the room during
Oh,
the
okay.
production, and
All
so
right.
I think in most of his albums, I think they've, at least in this album, this was like tracked live with like the full band there and everything. You know, not like
Don't fuck up.
Yeah, it was totally. A lot of them were like first takes, even.
Really?
Yeah.
These are not short tracks.
No.
7 and 9 minutes, night back in 60. Anyway, so what's your introduction story to him, and how did this one earn a spot for you?
Yeah. So introduction. I mean, I had always heard of him. I think I had kind of had the same background of Van Morrison as you did, where a couple radio hits.
Too bad
older
too
people
bad that
in
guy
my
didn't
life.
make any more music than those.
Right.
Kind of a two-hit
Brown
wonder.
Eyed Girl. Yeah, like older people in my life that were like, oh yeah, I really like Van Morrison, and to me that just like sounded like, the rest of that, I guess like time frame of music, and I was like, oh, I've listened to some of that stuff. I'm not super into it.
Right.
So, and then it was a drive to Colorado. My wife and I were driving to Colorado.
Oh, you're married. Okay.
Yeah. Married in 2021. So.
Right on.
Yeah.
Okay.
You
made it past that first 18, 24 months.
Yeah,
and you got a smile on your face right now.
It's going well. So
you guys must be doing something right.
Yep. So we were taking a trip to Colorado, and I don't know, I always feel like music sticks a lot when you're on a road trip too,
Oh my
just
God.
because of like you
Yeah.
associate the songs with the scenery and
The journey.
You're paying the journey,
your company.
You're paying more attention. Yeah, it's just a road trip thing. So I always like listening to full albums on road trips. So, and especially for the first time, like listening to
Oh, damn.
because I think it's the best way to hear a record for the first time, because it basically has your full attention, right? And then you're seeing cool things.
I'm sorry to jump in here, but it's in 2024 where, as you mentioned, most people are listening to shit out of their phone speaker.
Yeah.
As opposed to this or a decent car system or
That's
home
another
system.
good reason. Yep. The car audio.
But also, I think if somebody's listening to music on their phone, they're also doing other things at the same time.
Yeah.
Folding laundry,
Right.
looking at social media, texting, whatever the case may be. But when you're driving, be it the driver or the passenger, there's an element of forced concentration.
Yep.
Safety, am I sleepy? All
Right.
the stimulus of the world. So it's like you're
locked in.
You can't
in a
get
way.
that anywhere. So
Right.
to your point,
Great. Yeah. Great point. So yeah, we were making this drive to Colorado, and I was like, let's check out some Van Morrison albums. And I have a tendency with any artist when I'm about to explore them, I start from the very beginning.
Yeah,
I don't know if
buddy.
you do that.
Yeah.
But, I love seeing the growth. I love seeing the changes, and then I love like going back and reading about like if one really throws me off, where I'm like, what was with that transition from like the third album to the fourth album? I want to go back and read about what was going on during that time.
I hate Chef's Kiss, but it's appropriate right there.
So anyway, this is the second album, and we listened to the first one, and the first one was cool. It's like total blues, like raw blues album, which is also unlike stuff I had heard of his before. So I'm like, oh, so this is like how he started, and kind of blues, and had some cool like quirky songs on that first album that I really like. I think it's like Who Drove the Red Sports Car is a good one from that one. And then we throw on this one, and perfect road trip music.
Gosh.
Because just with the
I'm envious. I listen to it right here.
That's awesome. Yeah, with the the woodwinds and the strings,
Especially Colorado.
Yeah,
That drive.
Oh yeah.
I Pitt State for a year, and then moved out there and got residency and finished in Durango.
Oh, cool.
So
Okay.
7 years, and lots of Thanksgiving, Christmas.
Drives back and forth. Yeah. So
And-
that drive well.
Oh my God. And that's the point, is that people, the knee jerk, sort of like that same looking down at covers. Oh, the drive across Kansas is so flat, and but it's like it's fucking beautiful.
Yeah, and it's so
You
easy
gotta.
to drive that
It
you
is.
can check out in ways that you can't on like driving like Kansas City to St. Louis for example. You're like that's only 4 hours, but it's a huge pain in the ass.
I mean, it's all tight, and people are
Semis and
too.
yeah, it sucks. And then the drive to Colorado, it's like I always look forward to that, even
Yeah.
though like even driving to the mountains, it's like what 9 or 10 hours from here, but it's still
Yeah.
just like a drive I'm always looking forward to.
Yep.
So anyway, so
So
obviously
how far have you gotten in the catalog? If you went back to ground zero.
the Van Morrison,
Yeah.
all the way all the way through now. So
47 records of his you've listened to.
yeah, I think there were probably a few um, towards the middle of that where I listened to maybe like 2 songs and said no because
Okay.
he has an interesting story with his record. And I'm not going to act like I know all the details of it, but with his history with record labels, and he had one record label that it was almost like they held him hostage, kind of like they kept him in the deal, and he was just in essence he was making music he didn't want to
It's a fuck you record.
yeah. So he had a lot of that, and then he actually has one song when he comes out of that. I think he has an album or something called Out of Exile
Okay.
or something like that. It's a very interesting story, and I'm butchering details, I know,
That's fine.
but it's
I'm just-
something like that where he's like basically making soulless music for a long period of time, and those albums
Checking the
suck.
box.
Yeah, those albums suck, and then he comes out of that with a really good record, and he has one record that's really like pointing out music industry things that he hates, and like kind of like revenge album to the
dang.
music industry. There's a particular song. It's like something about all the record, like the greedy record label producers or something like something like that.
So you've listened to, if my math is correct, all 47 at least once. Are there a few that you know for sure that you've listened to multiple times all the way through?
Yeah, Moondance, definitely.
Okay.
This one obviously.
Yeah.
Hard Knows the Highway, I think, or that's either in the name of the album or that's the song that's on the album. But that one is, I think, one or two before or after the Moondance album, so it's right around that time. But that's another great one, Hard Knows the Highway. So
The two that were in my college home, St. Dominic's Preview.
oh yeah, I
Oh my
love
God.
that.
And then my roommate, who apparently listens to all of these, so shouts out to Steve, had, I want to say it's called A Night in San Francisco.
Snow in San Francisco.
No, it's a live one. It was a 2 CD live concert.
Okay, yeah. I've listened to that. Yeah,
Okay, and anyway, incredible dude, incredible songwriter. But I think I cut you off because you guys are on this road trip to Colorado. You listen to the first one, and then you listen to this second one, and the woodwinds and the scenery, and you guys are together.
Yeah, just fell in love with this record, and I just the vocal freedom of it, just like the way he just flutters over those instruments, and it's just like, man, and like this isn't overproduced at all, like in the slightest. He's just like almost ad-libbing these lyrics on the top. I love that some of the lyrics like don't make sense really. There's like they're it's such a dream state lyrics almost.
Okay. Yeah.
And that I love that type of lyric, so that always is inspiring to me too. So he nailed it with that in this album. I mean, it's just like
so.
crazy,
What's the
beautiful lyrics?
You guys are in Midtown, you said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is there a sound system of sorts in your place? Or?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah. My grandpa, who's passed away at this point, I inherited some of his old speakers, and they needed some repairs, but they're acoustic research, like I think it's AR3 speakers, some really nice speakers back in their time. And I had those restored by Slice speaker, in North Kansas City. So shout out to them because that was like I know a tough job.
Slice
but
speaker.
they're really good. It's I think his name's John Slice, or he goes by Slice, but I don't. That's not his last name, I don't think. But he's a nice guy, and he can repair any speakers. And these were a pain, I know, for him to repair. But those are set up in our like downstairs in a wood floor room on our main floor.
Connected to
That's just connected to an old receiver that I bought used on Facebook Marketplace from someone, but it's a nice receiver. And then up in my office, I have another receiver with a record player, with my uncle's record player.
Nice.
And he actually passed away, unfortunately, too, from ALS. But I got his records and his record player.
Oh, dang.
And so he has a really good setup. He was into that. So it's a Riga record player.
This is where you do all of your mixing and mastering and
I kind of move around for that.
Oh.
I found it helps me to like change the scenery.
I love it.
But that's hard too because like I don't know, you have everything hooked up in one room and but it's nice to be able to move around too. So
as a not handy person, and I had some help instruction wise and a little bit of assembly too, made this table out of a door that was behind my hot water heater.
Cool.
And it was
That's
framed
really cool.
like all the way around 2x4s, and so I took them apart and cut them down. That's what the support is.
Nice.
And I wanted it to be there's
resourceful.
there's a third of it that is still just hanging out in my garage. I could make another table out of it if I wanted. But I wanted them to be able to connect, so they connect with some hasps in the center.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one table, but also I wanted to be able to get it out of here if I want to hang out in this room.
Yeah.
And I can do that. I just get all of the stuff from this side over to here, take that one out, get the chairs out of here,
There
and
you
then
go.
put
Yeah.
this piece over there, and my boy can play Fortnite. Or the last day before the school year started, we did a movie marathon down here, and
Nice. Yeah.
So
you're modular.
but
with it.
and to that end, I don't have to disconnect. But I've done 4, maybe 5 elsewhere of
Nice.
these.
Okay. Yeah.
And so one I flew for, the others I
cool.
drove. But it's like it's a process to take everything apart.
Yeah.
My youngest sister, who shouts out to Jessica, she was episode 100, hates that those cords are there. At one point, I was like, I'm going to drill holes and mount baskets underneath, and that'll be out. I'm like, I can't give any more to maybe one day.
Yeah. I know.
So you move around. Yeah. That's a great.
Yeah.
Okay. So is there if you're both home and music is playing, are you guys in separate spaces? Are you ever listening to music together? And if so,
we listen to music together quite a lot.
So who's choosing? Both of you?
Yeah. It's usually either one of us, but whoever's choosing is playing a playlist that we know the other's not going to hate, kind of thing. So it's
you had to get to that point though, right?
Yeah.
Babe, I'm
so
tired of the Dixie or whatever,
Yeah. So she's more into like newer pop music than I am, and I'm I'm not really, but
you're more informed of that scene than you would be.
It's nice. Like anytime I ride in her car, I'm like, "What's this one? I actually like this." It's like one of every 5 or something, but it's still nice, and it's still nice to have an idea of what's going on. Because otherwise, I would just like live in a hole and listen to these old records like Astral leads all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's nice. We have a nice balance of listening. I think we like probably our favorite time to listen to music together is like when we're about to go to a show, and we never listen to. We usually don't listen to the band that we're gonna go see. But we like listening to the openers, and then we all like listening to just like any playlist that's kind of like similar style.
Yeah,
music,
okay.
But
is she going with you tonight then? Oh,
yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
So have you, prior to today, have you guys put anything on to sort of get you in that mood, or not yet?
Not really yet for
Okay.
this one.
Yeah.
This one kind of snuck up on us we've been busy lately, but
Sure.
yeah. I think we'll probably listen this afternoon to some music before we head out there. So.
Where did you guys also meet in Manhattan? Or?
No, we actually met in Lawrence. Strangely enough, it was so Matt, the bass player. It was his wedding.
Oh.
In his wedding, Allison, my wife, and I were both part of the bridal party. So we met during that. So she was really good friends.
Fun and
yeah, spontaneous way to meet.
There's
so.
sort of a mysterious or unspoken potential for like attraction, sexiness, and if they don't all know each other already, right?
Yeah,
and it's not family or whatever, like so that's but seldom.
I agree. I think it's like one of the best ways to organically meet someone still. Like
Yeah.
There is that kind of aura where like I would say like you have some trust for them for the other side because it's all mutual friends, but then it's like they're mutual friends, but they're one or two layers.
Well, even
removed.
if I'm not sure why I'm leaning to the bride side, probably because whatever. But if there's 3 aside or 4 aside, and they don't, there's been beef or something, but they're all gonna game face and be pleasant for
you see
right,
everyone at their best,
right?
Kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it is anyway.
Yeah,
that's fun. So married 3 years, no kids.
No kids.
And
no.
pets.
Yeah, we one dog.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Right on. So 68 with Astral Weeks, all the way to 93 with August and everything after. Counting Crows. First 7 for them, 11 tracks, 51 minutes from Northern Ireland to San Francisco. And this has made one list all the way back to episode 48 and Cole Welch. Cool. That's my graduation year. So like, I don't,
Was this big? Like do you remember hearing it? Okay.
Yeah, huge because it's like this,
radio.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I definitely had, I don't know that I ever bought a copy of it on cassette, but I definitely knew people that had it on CD. It was definitely part of this mix in that spring. I mean, graduation is right there, and it's like you're a free person, whatever. That's also like the last time that this particular group, your whole class, is going to be. Everybody's going to go. So it was
special time. So you have some nostalgia with it.
Yeah, and I hadn't listened to it maybe since then until episode 48, and I was like, and here's what happened. I drifted music taste wise, and just I didn't turn away from them. I was just going in other places, and then I wound up chefing at this place. In Westport, actually, that had the old school, like a satellite radio system. I mean, it's like a company, and they have a hardware that it runs your sound for your restaurant, right? And it's like stations. I mean, it's the before Sirius and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I forget. It was called Muzak, I think. So. The GM of that, we had worked a handful of shifts together. He would put it on the channel that was them and their counterparts in 2000.
Gotcha.
2000,
okay.
Early 2000s.
So you got to
and so I'm here in Pave Paradise to put up a parking lot, and they had another big hit. I heard him so many times. I was like, fucking Counting Crows, make me want to.
They wore you out.
Punch through,
Yeah. I don't like Big Yellow Taxi that much. That's one of my least favorite Crows songs. So.
Okay.
So yeah, I can see that one.
But when I put this on to prep for episode 48, I was like, oh my God, this is such a beautiful. Forget about the hits. You can keep the hits. Yeah. But what? Let's see here. high school graduation for me, where is it stored for you? What were you doing in life when it landed in your lap?
Yeah, I think that was like back to talking about LimeWire. Like I think seventh and eighth grade was when I was really starting to like build up my collection of music, just like on my own for the first time, and actually like cataloging music and saving it on iTunes or whatever. So, and I just remember coming across them, listening to this first album, and I was just like, this is my favorite band. Like this is
Did you listen
and
to Big Head Todd, Sister Sweetly
mm-mm,
Oh man, I mean, they're like of the same ilk.
really okay.
Totally different sound, but right in that
Okay,
same time
I'll
frame.
check them out.
That's a really
Yeah.
great record. They still tour a ton.
I'm
They're
surprised it hasn't come up on the algorithms for
right.
me.
Yeah, no
So,
kidding, no kidding.
Big Head Todd, you said?
Big Head Todd and the Monsters.
Okay.
Yeah, Sister
Okay.
Sweetly is the. I mean, they have other records, but that's the one that was
Gotcha.
like right around that same time.
Gotcha. Yeah. So
Um,
yeah, for me that was like middle school and just falling in love with it and cover to cover loving every song. So yeah.
cool. Um, I let's see, track 4, Perfect Blue Buildings, and
Yeah.
5, Anna Begins, 8, Sullivan Street. I mean, those I knew a lot of it just because it was,
Yeah.
but revisiting and hearing, like, man, these are some really good songs.
Yeah. Deep songs too.
Yes.
And that's why it's always surprising to me to hear like what you mentioned that it was kind of well-known popular music because it's it doesn't hit that way when I listen through this album cover to cover. Like,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, you know.
Mr. Jones does. I mean, I can see, and I
Yeah.
love Mr. Jones. It's a great song.
What's the lead track?
Around Here.
Yes.
That's my favorite song of all time.
Oh, nice.
So,
Nice.
yeah.
A great one.
Yeah.
So, like I said, grunge is kind of exploding. So is this vein of not. And then over here you have the Horde Fest, which is kind of the origin of the jam band.
Okay.
Widespread Fish, Blues Traveler, Big Head Todd, and but counting, so you have all these veins of music just really thriving, and they were in kind of the
Kind of pop.
kind
like,
of pop,
almost,
but
yeah.
but a little less accessible. You called those songs deep songs.
Yeah.
You're not getting that kind of depth from the pop.
Right.
So they're kind of pop adjacent,
Yeah.
which makes them more accessible
Yeah.
to folks.
What's
and then
that?
I think
adult contemporary, I think.
that was probably a channel on our music,
I hate
that's funny.
the name of that genre, but it's like I think that's probably what they fall into.
Yeah.
Like Brandy Carlisle.
Yeah.
Like,
So what about the rest of their catalog? Did you?
yeah, I've listened to all of it.
No kidding.
I love. I mean, they're my favorite band, Counting Crows.
Oh, that's
so
great.
I know. I mean, I've listened to every one of their songs and have probably almost every one of them saved. So
Cool.
yeah, this one just stands out because cover to cover, it's just amazing. I've seen them like I think 12 times.
No
or
kidding.
Something.
Nice.
Yeah. That's always fun. Adam Duritz is like, he's a great entertainer.
Yep.
He goes a little overboard with the booze sometimes. It shows. I think I've seen
Today.
him, like I don't know about today. I don't know. I haven't seen him in a while.
Oh,
but,
okay.
I know, or like I've definitely seen him where he's played a show drunk before.
Sure.
But I mean, it's cool to see like when you see him 12 or 13 times, you're like, oh, okay, this is Adam drunk. Like this is so.
What about for you guys? Drinks before a show?
Yeah. Not really before.
Okay. That
but
makes me.
We need something to take the edge off at the beginning. So like kind of right at the start, we usually have a couple
Cool.
drinks,
Okay.
throughout the show, but it's not as much as any of us I don't think would drink like while listening to someone else's show because you have to stay functional.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Exactly.
so there's definitely a line, and I think you learn that with. Like I'm sure we drank way more in our college shows, and I'm sure
Obviously,
it didn't sound
yeah.
very good. So, at certain points, so yeah, you learn your limits,
Yeah.
musically, and then you learn to. I think as you get older, you really want to like, even if there's no like external value to it, you're like I want to nail these songs. Like we
Dude,
have this mutual like want to get the songs right.
Yeah, your
So,
cadence, whether you're strumming, playing single
yep.
notes, doing piano, whatever. If you cross that line,
Yeah.
maybe it's a second drink or a fourth, whatever it is,
Yeah.
because you know, if I can totally see, I would be right there with you guys. Meaning, like, I don't want to have a drink or anything before.
Yeah.
Maybe I would like to get set up and then relax for a second,
That's
and
the
then
best. Yeah.
get one as we're about to. You know what I mean?
That's the best if there's time
Because
for it.
what happens if you have a drink like it tasted good? I wouldn't mind having another one.
Yeah.
And then if you can't go back.
Right, yeah.
If you are all of a sudden
Yeah, there's a frustration there when you hit that point too, and and then you remember that like hauntingly. You're like, yeah, I don't want to be like that while I'm playing. So.
Yeah.
But
Well, a short leap now, this time to 95 with self-titled Ben Folds 5.
Yeah.
First of 4, 12 tracks, 46 minutes from San Francisco to Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Compositionally, like I'm very far from being versed in the Ben Folds world, but I have whatever level of music ear I was given or learned or both, I don't know. I've always been able to tell that it's rooted in the piano.
yeah.
Right, and I know that part of that is because whenever he came out or this came out, there were videos, and he's oftentimes at the piano.
Yeah.
But I think you don't need. You can. The piano is very. The level is high, not to an excess.
Right.
But it's also got an energy.
Comparatively to other albums that has piano in it, you mean?
Yes.
Like, yes, I fully agree. It stands out.
And he's also, I mean, as far as I know, he's always had chops.
Oh yeah.
Like he's a busy pianist.
Yeah.
Right. But the significance of this one for Dylan Johnson is.
Yeah. So this was right around the time, like we talked about before, when I had quit piano. This is right around the time I was coming back to piano.
Oh.
And so
cool.
I loved the songs on this record. I was like falling in love with all of Ben Folds' discography. This was probably my favorite one. And they were hard songs, so I was kind of trying to learn some of them too.
4 as Ben Folds 5. How many ish does he have solo?
I'm not sure because they blend together for me, like the Ben Folds versus Ben Folds 5.
Okay.
I mean, to me the sound's a little different, but it's not like a
couple or 3 or half a dozen or something like that.
Yeah, you could throw one on and I wouldn't know what record it was from, and I wouldn't know if it was Ben Folds or Ben Folds 5
but
half
you
the time. So
most of the time enjoy it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're coming back to piano.
Yep.
You cross paths with this thing.
Yep. And fall in love with the music side of it. I love like the distorted bass player, like that always stood out as like such a cool compliment to the to the piano sound. Like especially we talked about like panning earlier. You have like normally bass is like dead center in panning, and like some of these songs you get like distorted bass in like the left ear, and then you got the keys banging around in the right ear, and so it's I don't know. I just fell in love with that.
That's him in there doing that intentionally.
No, he had like for sure the production, yeah,
right.
So, but I've seen, I guess that time at Bramlage, but I've seen them a few other times, and that's always like they're kind of at the heart of it. They're a 3-piece, like with a great drummer that's really active, and then Ben on the piano, on like a big piano in the front of the stage, and then I always remembered seeing that bass player that was like had the distortion pedal that was just cranking out cool high up on the fretboard.
Oh, cool! Yeah.
So
yeah.
It was cool. It was inspirational for. That was also when I was writing a lot of songs for Humbled Pride, so I was like taking a lot of inspiration from the composition part of it, especially of like when you play piano and you're trying to like play keys in a band. That was kind of a weird, like there isn't a lot of that. Like most of the most like 5-piece bands or whatever that have keys, it's very background, and it's like most of the songs they're just doing like a low synth or something that you can't really hear. Every once in a while they'll put a few like high key sprinkles in, but like you said with this, it's like the piano is driving it, like it's driving the songs, and the songs are written on the piano and for the piano, and so I think I took a lot of inspiration from that with writing for sure.
Have you ever ventured down the jazz rabbit hole?
Playing wise, not too much.
No, listening.
Listening, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Big John Patton.
Yeah. I love. I love it all.
Blue John, I think, is the name of the one of his that I have owned and adored for a quarter century.
Nice.
I mean, and it's driving, but it's keys.
Yeah.
Right, and it's a big, fat, fluffy sound that just kind of takes you.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, somebody's doing a horn solo, and you're like, oh, I didn't know you were here. That's cool. And you're like, shit, that guitarist. But because the keys are like, anyway.
I love watching the live jazz in Kansas City too.
Cool.
And that's always inspirational for me too, to just go watch those guys. Some of the best musicians.
Nice.
Obviously, but.
Well, this is never at the forefront. It's always back here and murky. But when you're trying to like get to know a guest, because most of the time when I open that front door, it's a perfect stranger.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I'm just creeping in everybody's DMs. Hey, I can. Fucking this guy.
Welcome to my house.
Yeah. So you're getting to know the person via their digital footprint.
Right.
And then they have this list, and sometimes it like aligns, and sometimes it's like I had no idea. It doesn't matter. It's just fascinating.
Yeah.
But when I saw that you were guitar, keys, vocals for Humbled Pride, and I was like, oh, he's got a Ben Folds right like that. I see that there, man.
Yeah, that was an obvious one, I'm sure. Yeah.
So next we go to 2010, and not just a live one, but a 2-night, 4.5-hour recorded record with O.A.R's Rain or Shine. 4th of 6 in their live albums versus 10 studios. And these guys, of a Revolution, my sister, the same one, had a healthy pocket where she was all about these guys, and I think saw them a couple times. But I had to look at it. So it's Of a Revolution, Rockville, Maryland. I essentially knew nothing beyond that before I hit play, and then I hit play. The lead track is.
I love the lead track. That's my favorite track on there, About Mr. Brown.
Yes. Yeah. But so then it gets, and I'm like, okay, so this is like kind of a jam band with a nice horn section, and then vocals that sound like Bare Naked Ladies.
Yeah,
was the
I could see that.
picture that I was drawing. But I mean, that was this is all fresh and first for me. So you're the expert on that.
That's a pretty good description, I would say. I mean, I think they definitely take like some jam band influence, but for me, this one is just like our band all loved O.A.R. like Humbled Pride did. So this was like our music we bonded over for sure, and we still do.
You guys have seen them together then? The three of you? Nice.
Yep, a number of times. We saw them in Red Rocks together actually, so that was really cool. And we've seen them at Grinders, or I've definitely seen them at Grinders multiple times. And I mean, dude, they're so much better live. They're one of those bands that like doesn't do well in the studio, frankly. So
what grade would you give their 10 efforts so far?
I don't like any of them.
None?
I don't like their studio stuff.
Okay.
I love the band. I just don't like their studio stuff. I don't know if it's the producer or what.
Interesting.
Well,
I wanted
to... That's just taste. That's not...
Sure.
Like, I don't have anything critical to say about it, but...
I wanted to be a little bit of a snob and say, if this is, in fact, 2 nights and it's recorded at the same venue, there's a couple of repeats. But I immediately had to discard that thought because they appear in different spots in the set and have totally different lengths.
Yeah,
So they're doing
they did
the same
two
song, but
different ways.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I was like, all right,
Sorry, that was a lot of homework, I guess, with this one.
well,
Like a 20, how is it? Like 25 tracks or something?
some
Four, oh, that was like per.
four disc.
So
If you had a
I used to just put the whole thing on. Like I remember college, like Friday afternoons after my last class, like this was the best like afternoon music before kind of a party night with your friends,
Sure.
and just hang out
Sure.
in the backyard,
Oh,
throw
it
on
was
the entire album.
it was fine because I have been not, it's when you have two of these a week, or it's
Yeah.
4 weeks in a row of two a week, and you're like,
I have to listen to yeah.
it comes down to like I can't consume every second of every track on every record on every
Right,
list.
yeah.
Like at some point you're like, fuck, I'm out of time.
Yeah.
This guy is here. No. But that's awesome. I love that you guys bonded over them and have seen them together. That's super cool.
Yeah, they also were like a band that I think they all went to Ohio State, and they played together there, and then just kind of like sprung out of that and became who they are. So we kind of saw our story like as similar to, we're like, you never know, we can make it big. Like,
MHK.
yeah,
O.A.R.
exactly. Yeah.
I
So,
do sort of feel like when I first started hearing them, they were like touring the college scene hard.
Yeah.
And
They definitely had like a college cult following kind of when I was in college.
Okay.
It's weird. It's weird why, and I think I've read like interviews even with them about that, and it was totally unexpected for them to have that type of following too, but maybe it's just I don't know, whatever clicks with that crowd, but
I mean, if you're in college, there's a sort of like that meeting somebody in the bridal party of a wedding. Like there's a huge portion of people that are in the college life that are their party mode switch is on.
yeah.
Right? You're maybe you've never partied at all before college.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you only used to party on the occasional weekend, and now you're like going out weeknights. So if your juices are primed for that party life, and you get, a little bit of jam band goes a long way to like making it like, holy shit, that was a great show, right?
Especially like outdoors
Yeah.
too, and you just get that
Nice
vibe
weather.
going.
Yeah.
So
cool.
yeah, you're right.
I am so pleased with the way that this rounded out, because we finish it in 2019 with Norman fucking Rockwell, Lana Del Rey, 2019, 6 of 9, 14 tracks, 67 minutes. We started short journey from Maryland to Manhattan, NYC, and this is complete. I kind of wasn't surprised that A.O.R. sounded like what they sound like, because I kind of just knew without ever.
They were who you thought they were.
Yeah. Dennis, R.I.P. in peace to Dennis Green. And I probably have. My sister has for sure played them for me. I've also probably heard them other spots and didn't know I was hearing them.
Yeah.
But Lana Del Rey, I just have the name, right? Like somebody in a headline, or
Really, you never heard her before.
not even.
Wow.
I mean, there was one tune that felt quasi like maybe this was a popular one, but so I was like, what is this? Is she folky? Is she, what is it going to be? And I love this record. I mean,
awesome.
Like out of the gate, and I was like, oh, and then and 67 minutes, like that's I know she's made plenty before this, so this is her first time doing it, so she can do whatever the hell she wants on whatever record she wants, but closer to an hour, on the underside of an hour, has always kind of been more than. Now it's like, bands that are in this world as young and for first time recording and putting stuff out there, it's like single, EP, and then a
Uh-huh.
full length. And you look, it's like 9 tracks,
Yeah.
37 minutes. It's like,
Yeah.
damn, you
Yeah.
guys.
It's quick song, 2.5 minute songs. Like,
This thing never quit.
yeah.
And I was like, why don't it's like, I think I did see somebody use psychedelic as one of the many descriptors of the kind of music that this is. But I mean, just freaking lovely.
Yeah. It's mesmerizing. Yeah. I don't know about psychedelic, but I could see that. But
Not that I'm glad you said that, because I have actually straight up asked a guest or two before, what is the definition of psychedelic? And I knew that I was going to ask that and looked it up myself and wrote it down.
yeah.
And I bet you could put 10 people in a room and get 10 different definitions.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily mean like trippy and drugs and Pink
Right.
Floyd. It can mean
Yeah.
a lot of different, like, just, there's a lot of music
It's a
that,
broad term.
you called some of the tracks on August and Everything After Deep. It's in that neighborhood,
Yeah.
but it's also like a murkier deep.
Yeah.
Like, I know this is deep in the human existence world, but where is it? I
Right.
don't-
Yeah. I think that it's got the deep lyrics for sure. It's got the kind of dream state lyrics, which that's a continuing theme for stuff that I like. I think Counting Crows does that. I think she does that really well. And then I mentioned that with the Van Morrison album.
I was
earlier, but,
thinking
like,
musically with her.
musically too.
Psychedelic
Oh god,
a little
her
bit.
voice is mesmerizing, and she uses it in so many different ways. Like, especially her newer albums, like, she's singing in some ways that she never even sang in the old albums, like with falsetto techniques and
Huh.
whatnot. And it's just like, she's so creative with how she uses her voice, and her music, I feel like, is just getting more and more creative even too, and she's letting more of herself be shown. And she's a fantastic artist. She's one of my biggest inspirations.
So if you're okay, I'm gonna. And by the way, sidetrack to a sidetrack. I am currently, forever and until recently, intimidated to go down the Bowie rabbit hole, because it's 27, and which is nothing compared to Van. But I just started, and it's like
Yeah.
I'm on the third. I'm re-listening the third because it ended up being on with the kids in the car, and I turned it down and missed almost the whole thing.
Right.
So, but the first one is like very oldie, that like old Dylan has
Where's Ziggy Stardust in that
It's-
lineup? Is that like
a quarter,
okay?
approaching a quarter of the way through.
Okay.
So, but
No, but that's the first. That's the first album.
no.
Okay.
If there's 20,
a quarter of the way through the discography.
Correct.
Okay, I gotcha.
And the first one is it's just like the very first two Bob Dylan records.
Yeah,
he never-
I've listened to those. Are weird.
He never wrote anything like them ever again after, right?
Yeah.
First two or three, and the first two Pink Floyd records sound nothing like the Pink Floyd that most of the
Right.
world knows. So the first Bowie album is that way, but it's just very. There's nothing weird about it. It's
Right.
just it's not Let's Dance and Space Oddity. It's just very kind of rustic singer song. And then album 2, he kind of opens up and you're like, oh shit. And then
Yeah.
album 3 is kind of like, oh my god, like this is
Yeah.
wild. But you choose the Van Morrison discography for this Colorado road trip. You went down hers at some point too.
Yeah.
Why and how did it start?
Yeah, good question. I mean, this is definitely the latest discovery of mine out of the, like, obviously it's the latest chronologically,
Yeah.
but it's actually the latest discovery of mine too. But it was probably, I think it was maybe 2015 or so I started listening to her, maybe
Okay.
a little bit before that. I don't remember why, honestly.
Okay.
I don't remember which song sparked it, but I think I heard a few that were more popular around that time, and I really liked her voice, and then I just was a lot of times I'll just do that, and I'll be like, oh, check out the rest of her stuff. So went down the rabbit hole. It definitely is like similar to what you just described with Bowie, where like her earlier stuff is nothing like what she's doing now. I mean, that's true of a lot of bands, but I think she was much more like pigeonholed into a pop role in the early albums.
Interesting.
Maybe she wanted, like, probably the best thing for her career at the time, but then it's like now she's being more exploratory and like doing whatever the fuck she wants, like you said. So I think that's cool. Yeah, she's Jack Antonoff is the producer, and I mean, I don't like Bleachers, I don't like his band, but as a producer, like, I feel like he just produces gold. Like,
do you listen to T Swift?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
I did. I know he did. I know he's been doing all her albums recently, but I know he did the two I have listened to were not the most well received, but I think they were the two where they went really mellow. She went really mellow. It was like, I don't know.
Folklore.
Folklore was one of them. Yep. And I liked
Evermore.
those. I liked those a lot.
Folklore and Evermore.
Yeah, I love his production. He's
cool.
He's a production genius. So I like.
So I mean, she's put out stuff as recently as when Suburbs came out, right? 2022.
Yeah.
And you're caught up, if you will.
Yeah, with Lana.
Yeah. But this one is
This one is my favorite. Yeah,
okay.
the newer ones are fine. Like, I still loved what she put out after this. I'm blanking on the name right now, but I just think this was like the heart of her. I think what was the release date on this one again? 2019.
19, yeah.
I think, I can't remember what was going on in her life. It was like maybe a breakup or something, but just lyrically,
do you think
it's the deepest for me.
Like, I was 2, if not 3 times Google image search while listening to this record, because I just like her face,
trying to put a face to the voice.
Yeah. And it's like she looks ridiculously different. I mean, you see similarities, but across whatever initially pops up, a lot of different looks and hair color. Like, her face almost looks and so where I land with that is I can't decide if she appears to be nice or not, because there's an intensity, like, even in that shot right there.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
yeah.
You know, so what do you think that if you ran into her on the street, she would be friendly? If it was
That's an interesting question.
not a paparazzi, nobody else notices. It's just you're coming out of the bagel shop and she's coming in.
I think she would. I've seen her in a few interviews,
okay.
and she's actually really like she's really friendly in interviews and everything.
Cool.
So I don't think she's closed off or anything like that. So I think she'd be fine. And I know she has a like deep appreciation for like musical art, and like I mean, most musicians do, but she is intensely like dedicated to like listening to all kinds of old music and researching music and getting better from it, taking inspirations from all genres, and so she's well-rounded like mentally for music.
Nice. Yeah, you said that about record 6 sounds nothing like record 1, and you said probably for hopefully for all bands.
Yeah.
Like, if all of your records are just the same. Yeah,
Green Day was kind of like that for a while, but
then
then they broke out of it. But yeah, if all your records sound the same, that's probably no growth.
No. Well, great list. Thanks for sharing it with me, and
Definitely.
for not disappearing in the while we were communicating to try to make today happen. You know, for a second, I was like, man, maybe it's just, which is fine. It happens. You know, a lot of people are like, sure, and then
the date comes around, like, oh yeah, I can't
or
do that.
you know, I want to do it. Well, okay, well, send me a list, and then nothing, or they never ever reply, period, which it all happens. But I'm really glad that this did, and you gave me a great list. This is definitely, I mean, it's already in my streaming, you know.
That's awesome. I'm happy to be able to present some
I mean, it's like I knew Astral, I knew August. I thoroughly enjoyed O.A.R. The good vibe
Yeah.
and quality production for a live record, which is
Yeah.
not.
The drums are produced so well on that for a live. Yeah, I agree. That's a good observation because I always have thought that too.
So, as if you stayed for whatever episodes you checked out, if you stayed through the whole thing, I like to close with a series of goofy questions, and then we'll get you out of here.
Sure. Yep.
So the first is, you get to have lunch with anyone, dead or alive, you're choosing, who and why.
Whew. Man, that's tough. Anyone you said dead or alive?
Yeah. And, or a cup of coffee or a beer or whatever, whatever the case may be.
Yeah. Man, let's come back to that one.
Okay.
I don't have a good answer for
Fair
that.
enough.
That's
Okay.
so tough.
So, a message for the person, young or old, just picking up an instrument, or just beginning to gig, or just going down that. I gotta believe there's some kind of learning curve in the recording, mixing, mastering, buying equipment, all of that. Like,
Yeah.
you don't just matrix upload a file and you know how to do all the stuff.
Right, yeah.
So either of those three, learning an instrument or gigging or studio work, for the person that's green and starting, what kind of message might you offer?
I would say, like, if you're half enjoying it, stick with it.
Okay.
Because that's the amount of people I hear tell me I wish, like, they have major regrets about not sticking with their instrument. So, I mean, if it's whether it's pushed upon you by your parents or school or whatever, like, if you have any enjoyment from it, try to stick with it,
Sure.
even if it's just small steps of picking it up once a
Yeah.
month or something. Just keep it alive, keep it in your life as long as you can, and as long as you're still getting some inkling of joy from it.
Cool. I like it. And I know I've already mentioned it a couple times, but I just still love that. For me, it's just move the needle a little bit. For you, it's you got to get out of there and get back in, or maybe move around, move to someplace else when you're recording, or I'm sorry, mixing and mastering, and,
Yeah.
and or even writing song. I mean, all of it. Like, let the thing breathe. Get in
Yeah.
there and put yourself into whatever the thing is, and then step away.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're gonna lose, I think, a lot of the potential that it had wherever it was born. Your head, your heart, both. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I really like that. You're given the ability to visit your past self at any age. Also, you're choosing. What age are you choosing, and what are you saying?
Man, that's tough. I don't know. I guess I'm pretty happy. I don't.
This is an issue because I love this question, but it is more often than not received as if the label of regret
Yeah.
is like, what do you? No, we don't want to. I don't want you to necessarily, unless you need to change something about some stuff. that
Right,
went
right,
down.
yeah, yeah.
But oftentimes, hey, you're doing great, or it's gonna be fine, or
Yeah.
keep doing you, or it's just, a lot of times folks say, I wish I would have started earlier with whatever the craft that they're.
Yeah. Yeah.
The most recent gal was like, do I have to? And I was like, do you have to what? And she's like, do I have to go back? And I was like, well, no, it's a theoretical, but like that. And she was like, and then she finally begrudgingly chose, and then was like, but I'm not, you can't make me say anything. I'm not saying anything. And I was like, okay, it's fine. Which I totally get if
Yeah.
you don't, if you're afraid of Back to the Futuring your present self by metal. But
No, I think I would probably go talk to myself when first starting Humbled Pride and just saying like, yeah, you're gonna appreciate this for your whole life.
There
So
you go.
just keep up with it, and you guys should try to stick together.
yeah. And I think if you take this theoretical and make it a reality, like it's either not going to be you,
Yeah.
like, or you're not going to be recognizable. So it'll just be like, yeah, there was
Yeah.
one day I was in this coffee shop and this dude told me to
Right. Yeah.
keep doing
I
this.
stick with it.
And
Yeah.
it
yeah.
stuck with me.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. I think my drummer said like 2 weeks ago, right before we were about to play, that he was like, I think playing with you guys is like, it's up there, like on like the most fun thing I do today, like in my life. And I'm like, yeah, me too. And
Cool.
so it's like, that's cool for us to
Heck
revisit that a couple times a
Yeah.
year whenever
Yeah.
we get the gigs. So
A thing that is now decades
yeah,
old,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or close.
And it's so much fun. Yeah.
If we can pretend or imagine that everybody's got a bucket list, and for this particular scenario, we all have a personal and a professional, two separate lists. You're given all the necessary resources to hammer out your number one on both. What would they be?
Yeah, I think professional would be just like create and get out there all of the creations I want to make in my life, whether
Cool.
that's like all of the inspirations that I ever get enough to the point where I'm like, I want to put this out as art, like to fulfill those. And most of those would be like musical albums for me, but I think probably a couple books too.
You're going to write some books?
Yeah. I've started a couple books, and it's like, yeah, I want to finish those. Just like ways I can create and just get
Where's that come from?
I don't know.
Did you read a lot growing up, or?
Like I didn't not read, but
'Kay.
I wasn't like I'm gonna be reading.
Did you? Where did the chops come from?
Chops for
Writing.
I've always loved to write. Yeah. So
okay.
I guess I have always loved to write.
Where's that go back to? First grade, second grade?
I think I remember my I don't know what grade this was. It was probably like third or fourth grade, and this is shocking, like looking back. But I remember I was really into poetry, so I would I had like a shoebox full of poetry that I found back at my mom's house a long time ago when she was moving, and she was like, here, you need to get this stuff out of your room. And I was like, whoa, I forgot I wrote all these in like third grade or something.
Forgot? Like it was gone?
It was pretty much gone, and then like obviously it came back to me, but I was like, yeah, I guess it makes sense why I got into songwriting when I was like writing shoeboxes full of poems as
in a pencil and paper and a notebook, or
yeah,
okay.
and just like it was like little pieces of stationery or something. But
I got a handful of those over there.
Yeah. I've always loved I always like manually writing things too, so
Okay.
I think I've always like just enjoyed the actual act of like pen or pencil on paper, and especially with like a good notebook.
But today, if you're writing, you're on a computer, right?
If I'm writing it depends on what I'm writing. Like
Okay.
if I'm writing like lyrics, like lyric ideas, like I'll just bring a notebook. Like earlier, like what I said of going to somewhere where I can eavesdrop or something, of just like, I know that sounds kind of creepy, but like that's a great lyrical process.
It doesn't, and the reason that it doesn't is because I'm reading a book right now. So I did psychology for undergrad, and then got a creative writing master's from UMKC.
Okay.
And as I was finishing, I think this is a thing that happens or used to whatever. The department is hiring, and so they're bringing talent in for interviews, and we get to go, like not everybody, and there's limited numbers, and so I went to two, and I think I went to two. I know for sure one that I definitely went to got the job, and it has been there. And so I'm reading one of her books right now.
Cool. Okay.
And actually not too terribly long. I finished in 2007. But here, just in the last year, I was at a show. I think it was a stand-up show, and like halfway through, I looked and she was 2 seats down from me, and there was a dude in between us.
Yeah.
And they didn't. I sometimes go to shows solo.
Oh yeah,
by
me
myself.
too. I love that.
So when it ended and the lights came up, I was like, "Hey man, is that Christy Hodgin?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "I thought so." And they didn't want to. They went their way. I went mine.
Yeah.
And she, this story, I don't know a ton about her, but I know very much so, obviously, what she looks like.
Uh-huh.
And so it's I'm about halfway through, and it's gone from a quasi young age to now she's done-ish with high school, or maybe she's been out of high. But anyway, the character is totally recognizable just by the way that she describes the character, right?
Right.
Not everybody that reads that book is going to have that experience because not everybody has
they don't know her,
met her or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's been, I've always, whenever I've been working on writing projects of my own, people, what do you write? And it's like, well, it's kind of autobiographical fiction is really what it is.
Yeah.
And so if your list of recipe ingredients is personal life experiences, and there's got to be a subject or two that you are very knowledgeable in, and maybe it's a subject you immerse yourself in for this piece, right?
Right. Yeah, like research. Like I've heard authors will research like 3 years sometimes before they even start writing like a novel or something, just to learn the subject.
Right. And so if you're limited in that personal experience, you only have your experience. So
right.
All that to say, if you hear a phrase that somebody says to somebody on the phone, or 30 minutes of conversation between two people, like, it doesn't have to be eavesdropping.
Right.
It can be like material.
Like, yeah, it's productive.
In that, like, we all have things that we go through or experience that are pretty relatable.
Yeah.
And then we all have some things that are not. And there's shit in between both of those things. But you're still you, and you only have what you have. So if you can,
you got to reach in and you can broaden
the fact
your
that
art
they're
a lot.
having this conversation reminds me of
Yes.
see, now all of a sudden you got another well to draw from. So I wouldn't, unless you're like recording people without their permission,
no.
I wouldn't worry about.
And I say that with all intentions of continuing to do it.
Yes,
so
I'm
like,
encouraging. I'm encouraging.
It's one of those things of like, how do I like describe what I'm doing? But obviously, you get it, and most people do get it once you talk to them.
So it depends on what you're writing. Sometimes you're still pen paper. Sometimes you are
right.
computer.
Yeah, like lyrics, short
Right,
enough content but like if you're cranking out pages of a book or something, I'm not gonna waste the time writing it all out pen and paper and then having to type it later. So
I've had some pretty lengthy writing projects, and I had a guest recently whose episode isn't up yet, but he wrote a book, and I was like, I don't know if I knew that about him before he got here, and when he shared it, I was tickled. And so when we were wrapping, I was like, so how many more of those? And he was like, and I was like, what? And he was like, no, I'm not going to do that again because it was a very lonely journey. And I was like, it sure as shit is. And I haven't even done it. I've only
dabbled in the beginnings.
Yes,
of it.
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it is.
I felt that way about the production of the album the same way. Like all the time spent on the boring stuff, especially like the chopping the tracks, and I'm like, this is lonely, man.
You get to file all of that stuff, writing, the music, all of that under the grind umbrella, and most of the time you consume some content of a person who did a thing that you like or respect or appreciate, doesn't happen without that.
Yeah.
So and that's only the only driving force.
Yeah.
You know, like we and plants and animals get food, water, sunlight, we get all these things, but you just have the grind to get it all the way done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, if you ever, and just putting it out there, I know everybody's different. If you ever want me to look at a passage or pick my brain writing wise, not that there's anything good up there, but
no,
I'm
I
here.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Absolutely.
So you've got whatever creative, be it records, books that you have, and you want to put them out there. You want to put them out there. That's your professional number one.
Yeah.
Do you have a personal as well?
Personal. I mean, I think that's hand in hand. I think that's professional and personal for me. Like, Perfect. It's like I see my purpose as to create, and so I want to get out my creations personally and professionally.
Did your lunch date come to you?
What?
Did your lunch date from question number one?
Oh, yeah, I think, and I was trying to, I think, grasp for something beyond what we had already talked about, but I think Adam Duritz from Counting Crows.
Oh, fun. Yeah.
So I don't know if you know, he has this like mental complex where like sometimes he thinks he's dreaming.
I mean, I'll say this. I know that I have learned or seen or whatever enough things about him over the years to be like, it's an interesting dude.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's like, I'm like, that's fascinating. Like, I want to ask him about that. And then he's probably my most inspirational songwriter too. So it's like, there's so many questions I would want to ask of his process.
Is he only vocals in that band?
For the most part, he plays piano.
He does.
I've seen him play piano on stage. He plays guitar too, but I think mostly on stage he's just vocals, and then at least the times I've seen him, which I guess is like 12 times.
Right.
So,
right.
And then like I've seen him, he'll sit down for some of the piano songs and play on the piano.
You've now mentioned twice that you've seen Counting Crows 12 times, and both times you had the same big smile that you did when we were talking about your wife. So don't stop.
Seeing them.
Yeah, I should be right now gearing up for night 3 of Fish at Dick's out in Denver. Basically, now it's a 4-night. Every Labor Day. This is year 12 or 13. I've been to almost all of them.
Very cool.
And so, it wasn't in the cards for me this year, but I've seen them 82 times.
That's cool. Yeah, I've heard they're an amazing show. Yeah,
I love them. Please complete this. The world would immediately become a better place in which to live, if only.
If only there wasn't an expectation to work 40 hours a week.
Amen, dude. Amen.
I think that just handicaps people so much with achieving their personal.
What about the 410s model where you get
still 40?
I know. I
think it's like, I don't know. I think I work in a corporate setting, and it's you can just see how much downtime there is and how much like bullshitting there is, that it's just like, okay, what do we really need? How many hours do we really need? And it's probably the answer is closer to like 20 to 25, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, but then like if you're going to be someone who's pursuing something on their own, then normally that's going to be way more financial risk to pursue that.
Yeah.
And so you're going to need to work that much harder.
Yeah.
Because it's like all you doing all the work.
Yeah.
So
I was same sister again on the phone through the other night, and she, has lived a different adult job life than I have. Mm-hmm. In that, when I'm 15 through 30, I mean, I was in a place talking to a person and getting jobs that way, and like resume. Digital world didn't exist, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm not, and I've also some jobs have been brief and some have been long. So like I don't have chops in the job hunt lane.
Yeah, that's
But she's a whiz.
really
And
like,
interview, negotiate. She's like
jeez,
hardball.
yeah.
So she was telling,
Stuff's intimidating.
dude, I know, it's great. Anyway, so we're talking about this on the phone the other night, and she says this job that she recently started, it's got all these great elements about it, and she took it over another position, and now that other position is, I think, if I understood, regretting not pursuing her harder. And the reason that talks fell off was because they wanted her to be full time in office.
Yeah.
And she's like, to literally, it's a desk job. It's all done from the computer. And they were like, we'll give you 10 more grand. And she was like, no. Yeah.
No.
If you break that down
Not
to like
enough.
per paycheck
Yeah.
and take out taxes, 10 grand ain't
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
And so she's like, I mean, and there's a guy that is, you know, sounding that trumpet and waving that, like, we must be in. It's like,
Yeah. Get them out of there.
look around, dude.
They need
Nobody
to
is
retire.
like, you know,
Yeah.
sprinting to the restroom and
Right.
inhaling
They're
food.
they're
Right.
chatting it up, being a distraction to other people trying to get work done for the most part is what I see.
Yeah.
And it's like, come on, man. But anyway.
This has been so much fun.
I agree.
Let's see here. DylanJohnsonLive.com, humbledpride.com,
Yep.
Dylan_Johnson_music on Instagram. Are there other plugs, or was there anything you hoped we would cover that we didn't?
No, I don't think so. And that's the best place to find my music too.
Cool.
So I appreciate that.
Cool. Well, thank you again. I look forward to seeing development with album number 2.
Yeah, thanks.
Which is
I'll keep you
2025 or
yeah, I'm not gonna put a date on it. At
Okay,
this
fair
point,
enough.
But it's in the right now. It's in the songwriting stage.
Okay.
So I think we probably have. I should say because I haven't really shopped these with the band like I said my process was, but I probably have 5 songs that are pretty much ready to go or ready to present to the band, and then I have a stockpile of lyrics to draw from for the rest of it. So
very exciting.
Yep, and then like I mentioned, we have those 2 older songs that we want to put on a record.
Right.
So there's those 2 also. So.
Right. Well, I will when it's time for this to finally live online, I will for sure have a peek at gigs that I can see
Awesome.
that are coming up, and hopefully get some, I don't know, additional eyeballs or ears on you. And
Definitely. Yeah. Thanks. I
thank you,
appreciate
man.
it.
Appreciate it.